starting out here. Yeah, so today's topic, we're going to go into desirable difficulty. And yeah, I called on each of you guys for this one because I don't know. I feel like you guys have interesting views. I remember I was sending out invitations for this one, went back to the Twitter timeline, and immediately saw Anansi tweeting. I forget what exactly, but it was like very directly like, man, what difficulties are desirable? How do you find those, man? I'm like, all right, I guess Anansi's coming. Cool, cool. And then, yeah. But yeah, so just full disclosure and kind of a map for what we're doing today. One thing is, yeah, as I've mentioned before the call here, my thyroid is acting up. I'm getting what feels like kind of an early sneak peek of dementia this week. Like, it's just not working and I'm confused a lot of the time. So until I can get my like thyroid hormones under control, I think I'm going to be like hanging back a bit today. And I look forward to like watching this conversation in a week or two and finding out all of the smart, wonderful things you guys said that I'm not quite tracking right now.
I'm loving
This is
watching
way
Anansi
too funny.
cracking
Why
up.
is this funny?
The failures of the body are always funny, Anansi. It's a riot.
This is like such a bad laugh. I'm like, okay, cool.
You're good, man.
If you're having fun with it, I'm really happy for you.
Oh, I'm here for it. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, so how I want to start out is I'm going to give just like, yeah, just quick rundown of like what the topic is, why I was thinking about it. And before we kind of start mind melding and crossing paths with what everyone is thinking about this topic, I just want to go around person by person and each of you just kind of like what this sparks for you. When I said to you, hey, do you want to have a conversation about desirable difficulty? What came up? What's like a trail that your mind fell into? And after that, we can start mixing, matching. What do we want to follow? All of that. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so desirable difficulty, the term, I'm kind of liking the term good friction lately. Someone replied with that one on Twitter, and that one seems better in some ways. But yeah, I picked up the term desirable difficulty back when I was teaching in Korea and trying to get better at teaching. And the core idea there was like, there are some types of difficulty that really help a student learn, and that they can't learn at all if it's too easy, if everything is just coming right in. But there are also types of difficulty that just suck and are difficult and don't help anyone. And it can be really, really hard to tell from the inside which difficulties are desirable and which ones aren't. Yeah, from yourself, it's almost impossible. And I saw this with tons of students, like things that they thought were like, oh, it's harder this way, or like this makes it easier, so it must be better. And I'm like, you're not learning anything. Like, you failed the last 3 quizzes, dude. You clearly do not know what is working for you here. Or something that I would try. And I'm like, 2/3 of the class just failed this quiz. That is not a desirable difficulty. We're gonna shelf that one. And yeah, that idea just kind of expanded more broadly. I wrote a bit about this in my article last month on Metis, on how some type of difficulty or risk or even danger feels really just important and vital to basic human flourishing. But we, as people and as a culture, love comfort so much, and our aims are always so directed at like what will make things easier, more convenient, more comfortable. And yeah, I'm just curious about that. Yeah, that friction between those, the pull back and forth between what desire, like even figuring out which difficulties are desirable, which ones are not, and then acting on that and being able to do that, and how much it's even possible as an individual in a society that doesn't pick the same things as you or doesn't desire difficulty at all. Yeah, those were the impetus for this conversation. Let's just go around my screen. We're gonna go Michael, Anansi, Cheryl. Michael, how you doing, and what came to mind for you around desirable difficulty?
I am doing well, thank you. Yeah, I gave it some thought and a couple of ideas. Is it okay if I say a couple of different things and then put them in the pot and see what happens?
Loose time limit of like 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. So the thing that came to me actually just before we came on the call, like after my other thoughts, was it's like I quit my job a couple of years ago because it wasn't working out for me. The whole like career track thing I was doing, that professional frame wasn't working. So I threw in the towel and stepped away and did this online thing. And what I did is like the equivalent of an elimination diet, or like I threw away all the difficulty, like the desirable and the undesirable difficulty all in once. And I think a lot of the last couple of years has been like, oh, there was some baby in that there bathwater. And I'm like, it's partly like rebuilding and rediscovering what are actually the desirable difficulties after that, because there are some. Like my general attitudes are hinting at the fact that like I need something that I've jettisoned to come back, and it's just I need to find for myself and build them for myself. To the extent that even the idea of work itself, that might be a desirable difficulty, which is an interesting to play with. So that was one thread I realized. There's another couple of things. One is that the desirability of it depends on the context as well. So let's say I think of myself as a writer. I like to write. For me, relying too much on like an AI writing assistant, AI writing tool, has the risk of removing too much desirable difficulty, because a lot of the work of writing is like, what do I actually think? It sucks, it's hard, and it's difficult. And if I make that stuff go away, I've made the point go away. Like it's desirable for me to have to suffer a little bit and have to do the work. But I'm not an artist. I don't care about making good like images for myself. So if I use Midjourney or DALL-E to make like an image for my article, there's nothing desirable about that for me. Like if I sketch something, I look like a 3-year-old drew it. So over that domain doesn't matter. So the context matters, I think, as well, for what's desirable and what's not, depending on what I want to learn. And thinking clearly is something I care about. So I'm careful how I use AI writing tools, for example. Another idea was the idea of ease versus appropriate amounts of energy or tension. So something that a lot of the, let's make it all frictionless angle comes out, or, I want things to be effortless. When it comes to stuff in the body mind, at least, effortlessness is not the result of zero energy or zero tension. The perception of effortlessness comes from an appropriate amount of tension or the appropriate amount of energy in the system. And if we solve for the wrong thing, if we solve for low or zero tension or zero energy, then that's not the same as solving for the experience of effortlessness with the context of appropriateness. That makes sense. So yeah, being careful that we don't make too much go away and we end up like on a pile on the floor versus like well coordinated. That's the difference between those two things. And the last thing, and then I'll hand over, was the idea of how we choose to attend in day-to-day life adjust the difficulty that we experience. So I watched that video that you sent around over the how Mario games make the game more difficult, where you can choose which track to follow. There's no easy, normal, difficult mode. It's just like you choose on as you go along. There's something similar in day-to-day life where I can choose to attend to, for example, the problem in front of me. Like, what am I writing? Okay, this sucks. That's one level of difficulty. I can also choose to attend to how I feel while I'm doing that. That's more difficult. So I can raise the challenge level, or I can like dissociate from the whole thing and not even feel anything while I'm doing my thing. So I can kind of subconsciously or consciously, hopefully, adjust what I attend to adjust the difficulty based on how I'm feeling and what I need at the moment. I think most of us put that too low, but the option is there. And as I get better, I can better assess what is desirable in the moment, or unlearn perhaps poor patterns of understanding around what's undesirable. So yeah, some ideas there. I will stop talking because I'm talking a lot. So over to Anansi, I guess.
Nice.
What's up? I'm Anansi. There was a thing we were supposed to say after that, but before what it brought up, right?
Nah,
Or
your
not?
call.
Cool. All right, we're just gonna go with the flow. So yeah, desirable difficulty. A lot of things came up for me. I've been thinking about this ever since you invited me. Uh, one thing that's alive right now, just talking, being in the moment with y'all, is just like desirable difficulty is about engagement for me. Uh, the right level of being in it is what I would call engaging, you know, and there's that heat, there's that electricity of like doing that thing or being in that thing. It's not like overwhelming, like, oh my God, I'm gonna fucking die. Like, it's like, ooh, okay, like we're in it. Like some good sex, or like being deep in a piece of art, or like having a challenging conversation, or like grappling with like a difficult problem, not impossible, but like something that's yeah. When I think about desirable difficulty, I think about being at the edge, being at the edge of the known. Not quite, not quite in the unknown where you're freaking the fuck out. I've been there. Uh, yeah, and I think desirable difficulty is at that edge between the known and the unknown. Uh, I appreciate that you said that thing about the Super Mario thing. Oh, so many thoughts about this. So many things. All right, I'm just gonna drop them. And one thing that comes up, there's a concept I love from this book by this woman named Jane McGonigal. Reality is Broken. Really cool book about this game designer's thoughts on how bringing more game design thinking to the world we're building could make it way more engaging. And she describes this concept she calls fiero. And I fell in love with it when I heard it. Fiero is the sense of triumph you get when you overcome. Is that, you know, that burst that happens when you push through something that was difficult, through a worthy challenge. And a lot of great video games are constantly like bringing that to your life, you know. Uh, uh, an example I thought of that was really like really good at desirable difficulty was like the Soulsborne games. If you any of y'all have ever heard of those, like Bloodborne and Dark Souls. And anyway, that is really challenging games, and they set you up with the expectation that like, you're going to die and you're going to fail, but like you're going to grow through it and you're going to figure it out. Um, those games are like an ultimate example to me of desirable difficulty, but that's not desirable difficulty to some people either. I'm a particular kind of kinky, so you know I'm up for that. I'm down to die a couple of times, a couple hundred times. So yeah, Fiero, Triumph, Engagement, The Edge. Is there anything else? The last thing that comes up is just like that's what living in surrender and flow feels like to me. Like I'm almost always in that like pocket of desirable difficulty where like it's hard and I'm not totally sure how I'm going to get through it, but it's possible. Um, and I find my intuition, that electricity I'm always feeling and following, is always taking me to that edge. And that is how I find myself in these adventures and in rooms like this, talking with you people. Uh, yeah, that's it. I'm complete.
Nice. All right. And Cheryl?
I feel like presently the expression of desirable difficulty to be, yeah, to be sought in every moment is, am I able to, in this moment, really raise the stakes of why I am here and to amplify how much it could matter to the point where, yeah, it's like my heart's beating faster. And there is an attunement to what if every move, every word, every expression that is called forth in the moment, like really has, yeah, you could say it's like it's an act of reality creation. It's like a kind of co-participation in a cosmos unfolding. And it's kind of like a it's a little bit intense to try to lean into that edge in every conversation. But it is also beautiful. Like it can be really simple moments, like when I was walking down the street this morning. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. And yeah, I saw it almost like I had this way of just seeing the way that flowers felt like they were trying to greet me and have me behold them in a very particular form of like meaning, just like, oh, meet me now. And then I was looking at this flower, and then three birds of prey, they were probably, I saw them as eagles, but I don't think they were eagles. I think they were hawks. But three of them just swooped through the neighborhood, and they just flew in perfect like synchrony, just through these suburban streets. And I just like let that matter. I was like, wow, what does that mean? Yeah, that these three birds of prey just showed up just as I was looking at this flower. Um, and I think that's where something in a kind of, yeah, it's like really allowing, I think Anansi, you were describing it as like engagement. I think there's like an engagement for me that really can amplify aliveness. Um, and this, it's like, what if every moment can be, yeah, it can be a peak moment. And it can be a peak moment that, yeah, I think peak moments can feel like intensity, like a kind of challenge of, like a muscularity of challenge, like I'm like forcing through or breaking through something. And then the peak moment can be like profoundly subtle and very quiet. But there is something in that experience that's about like a kind of opening to insight. So I think desirable difficulty is probably expressed in a kind of way of engaging with the world where like insight can really be present in every moment if you're willing to see it and feel it. Also, I'm going to stop now because someone's about to knock on the door. So I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm hearing like among the many other things I want to chase down, I'm hearing from basically everyone some version of flow coming through, where like the perfect amount of tension, staying in the pocket of like what is exactly right for this moment, staying in engagement. And I'm curious more about like experiences, like the things that each of you was talking about, where you're in that moment, you have just the right amount of tension, you're exerting and engaging yourself just the right way, and you're like, yeah, you're in it. Does anything come to mind as like an extreme moment of that just happening? Anansi's got something.
Ooh. Oh man. I'm thinking of this week where I basically went without food in the Bay. Oh,
Tell me more.
that was the pocket. I like let it happen. You know, that's like just where things were flowing. I didn't have any money. I could have asked for help. I could have done any number of things to make sure I ate. But that was what engaging with life felt like. Just like going without it until the moment broke and food appeared. Uh, it was so fucking alive, man. Like it was so like I still think to this day it was one of the most alive experiences of my life. Like I'm thinking like day 4, yeah, like day 3, day 4 was like I was so in the world. Like I was so here. Like my body was just like vibrating. It was like, and it kept moving. It kept like I kept walking. I kept like moving towards and having conversations and doing things and still being in the world. But like I was really on that edge of like it was just like, oh my God, this is what being alive is. This is what being in like fucking samsara is. Like, I was like, whoa. It's like my mind kept flashing like thoughts of food at me and like I call it and that felt in the pocket of engagement of desirable difficulty for me because like I could do that. I was already like used to like intentionally fasting, not long at times, but like and I'd already been living this life of very intense like surrender of like surrendering into art and surrendering into what would happen in each moment. And then the moment asked me to do that, and it was like, and I found out I could. I found out I could survive that. And the moment did break, and it led to a beautiful piece of art and like $50. And like, and it was just like, and it never got that bad again. It never ever got that bad again. It was genuinely transformative. It was, and I think that's just the interesting thing to me of how like what is desirable difficulty is so context dependent. It's so like I wouldn't say just dependent on the individual and their capacity, but the context, like that snapshot of space time, that again, like the edge of possibility. Um, and I should be more horrified about this, right? This should be like a terrible story or something. It was just like, but it was like, when I think about it, when I talk about it, like I'm watching viscerally, it's just like the shit is just lit up. And I'm just like, yeah, that's some wild shit. I can't believe I survived that. Like, good job, me. Like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, what stands out to me there is like the bodily survival thing being engaged. Like you were starving your body and it knew that there was like risk and danger, and something kicks up in that when it's like, yeah, man, I haven't eaten in 4 or 5 days. Like we're here, we're gonna spark up, we're alive. Like the big example that always comes to mind for me is when I was driving in Hanoi, and like I would drop into just this state of like divine flow fairly often. Because you can die out there. Like Hanoi is the craziest traffic I've ever seen. And once you learn to like navigate it and be in it and like find exactly where you can slip through. Yeah, every time I think of like flow, desirable difficulty, metis, any of this, I'm just like, yeah, Hanoi traffic. Those times when I like almost died over and over again and then like got just out of the way of the bus like a split second in advance, right there was like the most alive I have been. And it's not just because of like it's not just the raw danger, it's like something about consciously and skillfully navigating, yeah, that danger, that risk, that whatever you're putting yourself under. I don't know, that was good, man. I also didn't wear a helmet for like a year, and I did not understand why. Everyone was always yelling at me, just like, protect your goddamn head, dude. And like, something feels wrong about the helmet, and I can't put my finger on it. And now, like 8 years later, whatever, I put my finger on it. It was still a very stupid idea, but I figured out why it felt so good to drive around without a helmet, just weave through.
You're not gonna say it?
Oh, just that, like the The desirable
Oh,
difficulty, the meta, it's like that
oh.
feeling of being there and alive. If I put the helmet on, it was just like, yeah, I'm driving and I could break a leg and that would suck. Take the helmet off, it's like I can drive and I can break my leg, I can fuck up my head no matter what, it's fine, I'm here.
You're like a leaf on the wind. I don't know if you've ever seen the Firefly movie,
Essentially, yeah.
Serenity. Like,
Yep.
a leaf.
There's this one moment downtown off of Koze where like it felt like seeing through the Matrix, man. Like just these, 20 rows of just like crowded motorbikes coming through. And I'm driving straight towards it. I'm like, I should brake, I should stop and let them pass. But I just saw this one thing where like if everyone kept going the speed they were going, there was this curve that would show up of just clear space opening in front of me and closing behind me. And like no sane human should have taken that. But I was just in it and I took it and I was exactly right. I just straight through. And the beautiful thing about Hanoi is everyone kind of just expects that and lets you do it. So they're just like, they're not going to like break and panic. But yeah, it was so good. That was like peak aliveness.
Got two examples. Can pick one or go for two. What's your preference?
Pick the best one and keep following. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go a very different tack from Anansi. I was at a Alexander Technique retreat last year, August sometime in Spain. And so AT is a thing that you're supposed to practice all the time. Like there's no meditation. You're just like in the world, you are doing the thing all the time. And I had a one-on-one lesson with a really great teacher about halfway through the retreat. And she was like yelling at me frequently for like, you're not listening to me, you're not doing what I'm saying, you're not, just like almost berating me for like, you're not sufficiently attentive to all the advice I'm giving you. And if you won't listen to me, there's no point me even being here. What's the point? All that kind of a bit dramatic, but it was really quite affronting because I really respect this teacher a lot, and she is amazing. So I kind of like resolved like, okay, I will stay with this thing. I will listen to you. I will kind of take on whatever wisdom you're imparting that I do not understand. And lesson ends. And then like the next day, I'm still with this thing that she's recommending. I'm sort of very like walking the tightrope of like not over efforting, not falling off, but like staying with the thing. And about 24 hours later, I like shift into this like high aliveness mode where like I've taken a medium dose of mushrooms, and it's just like, why is the world glowing right now? Why is like I'm pretty sure I had the guru halo thing going on for people like, what's up with you kind of response. I'm like, I don't know, but I'm really present. I'm almost too present kind of thing. And for me, the desirable difficulty was like me being told by this person who I really respect that I wasn't stepping up, if you like, that I wasn't fulfilling my side of the bargain. Like she was teaching me something and I wasn't taking it in. And her telling me off for that was like, oh, okay. And by doing what she said, I had this bizarre altered set of consciousness for like an entire afternoon floating through the world. It was very beautiful. And I don't understand why that happened, but there was something there that unlocked only by being told off, in a sense, by someone who could tell me off and I wouldn't just say, screw you, So that was really powerful.
A meaningful challenge. You were challenged, you were challenged to like, I love that. It's exciting.
It kind of felt like, where's your honor, sir? Kind of challenge. It's like, it was really interesting. Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Cheryl, any specific examples come up for you or just a general floating field?
Yeah, maybe there was a kind of felt memory that floated up as we were starting. And one of the practices that I love that is a kind of desirable challenge is camping, canoe camping. I haven't been able to go as much, but there's something around the effortful pleasure of doing very mundane things like, yeah, packing up enough food, bringing your tent, bringing your bear barrel so that bears don't come and maul you at some point in the middle of the night. Like carrying a canoe over your shoulders and portaging for kilometers. Like the pain of the muscles, like of your shoulders and in your arms when you're just canoeing, often like paddling against wind to get to a destination just on time. Yeah, like not knowing what the weather is going to be like. Sometimes there's storms that happen that are so loud, like so, yeah, so it's like when you're sleeping in a tent and it's only a thin piece of fabric separating you and the wilderness, like everything is so much louder and so much more dangerous. And I remember one night it was just lightning was flashing in the sky and it felt like the thunder was inside of the tent. And there's like this feeling of I might just die. Like I don't know, but it feels like I'm going to die. And like there's almost like this bliss to it as well, to be so, yeah, to be so kind of like raw in one's intimate relating with the natural elements. So there's like, yeah, there's something about that that I really love. And there was an experience that was coming back up for me. It was a slightly more chill camping trip. There's an island that, yeah, I call reishi island, because there's a lot of reishi mushrooms that grow. And for me, they felt like when I saw them, like bright red mushrooms growing on trees, like they felt like my ancestors, like ancestral mushrooms were coming to greet me. And on this trip, I was sitting on this rock and I was just journaling. I was drawing. And I think I'd taken mushrooms. So I was a little bit in an altered state as well, but just like subtly so. And I had this impulse. I think this was like 4 years ago. I had this impulse to draw exactly what I was seeing in front of me and to perceive with such clarity that like the excellence of which I like that I needed to get right exactly what I was perceiving was like impeccable. It was just, and it was very, and it almost brought me back to when I was younger, and drawing and art felt like on some level at times like it was just high stakes. Like I needed to get it right for some reason. And I was sitting on this rock and I was just drawing exactly what I was seeing in front of me, like the trees. And I could hear, I could hear my, it was interesting. It was like almost like Confucian ancestors, like guide me each moment, just like you have to, it was almost like I was hearing them teach me the discipline of art again and the discipline of seeing, the discipline of perception. And it completely renewed a kind of like difficult relationship that I have with discipline, where I grew up in a Chinese, yeah, like a Chinese Canadian family where like actually my Chinese name means very hardworking. So it's just like, it was so drilled into me, like difficulty is good. You have to work so hard. And I feel like I spent most of my life really rejecting that. And then I had this moment where I was like, oh, like, thank you for, yeah, teaching me why difficulty can be so enlivening. Um, and then like not too long after that, I decided to go on a 3-month monastic retreat because I was like, oh, something's calling me to, yeah, some kind of like I don't know, it's like an excellence or like an impeccability of seeing that could only happen through um, being challenged.
That evoked so much from me, Cheryl. Like one opening about a canoe trek. One of the greatest adventures I've been on in my life, back in my scouting days, was there's this high adventure base called Northern Tier. And you go on a canoe trek from starting in Minnesota at the something borders or something, and you go from Minnesota up into Canada and through and back. It was like 100-mile canoe trek, and yeah, we did the porting and like all that prep and the constant like it was awesome to be reminded of that. I had this memory, this vivid memory of being on this lake and it's like misty outside. And I think it was like early in the morning. And I remember being like, this is beautiful. Is this what adventure is? And the other part, when I heard you say like difficulty is good just now, it like made something click for me about like why I do things a certain way. And like I wonder a lot about like why I can't get excited to pursue money more aggressively. And I'm just like, well, that wouldn't be challenging. That'd be easy. That would what would be the desirable difficulty in that? I know what having money is like. Thank you.
There was some book I read a couple years ago where one of the characters just said the line like, I forget what exactly it was, but he was like, money isn't power, money isn't any of these other things. Money is lubricant. Like money just lets you slide through life and nothing can touch you. It all just slides right off. And yeah, what you were saying, a lot of what we've been saying, but the tent thing, for whatever reason, just sparked an idea around, yeah, we love comfort and we protect ourselves with comfort. And in order to like experience kind of ecstatic face to face with reality, you can't do that with like your comforts and protections and your money lube all over you and stuff. Like that seems functionally true, that your protections and comforts and lubrications have to be stripped away so that you can be face to face with, yeah, just the hard whatever of reality, man. Yeah, what Anansi's doing. But yeah, that
What stood out
explains
to
some
me,
stuff
sorry,
about money to me too. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that in, Anansi.
you said the thing about the bear barrel, or like I'm guessing putting all your food and stuff into a barrel so that bears won't attack you. As a British person,
Hoist it up into a tree.
amazing. We don't have bears here. The worst thing that's going to attack you here is a badger. There's just no danger really in the countryside. Maybe a fox, you know, in a bad day. Um, and it just made me realize that obviously adventure can be found here, danger can be found here, but that's not a natural part of the environment. So you could almost say the UK is a more sanitized version of like the wild in the US in a sense. Like it's much safer just to go out there and go for a walk. So if we keep pushing that further and further towards safer and safer, what am I missing out on because there are no bears here? You know, what other things are there like that in my environment that I don't even know I'm missing because it just doesn't exist? And the more we push society towards safer and safer, they won't even know what they're missing because it won't exist unless they hear stories of adventures elsewhere. And it just really struck me as a thing I wouldn't even know I'm missing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I put this on the like reading list before, but I read some article a bit ago that was, I don't know, it's wherever the phrase progress studies comes from. Was it like a Peter Thiel or some, I don't know. But there was a line in there about how like, you know, new technologies will not make everyone billionaires, but they will make, like, we do want to make sure that everyone in the future has the comforts available to billionaires today. Like everyone in the future will be more comfortable and their life will be easier than the billionaires of today. And yeah, that hits something for me basically around what you're saying of like, how far can we push towards like convenience and smoothness and total loss of friction before we are losing. I mean, I'd argue like we've already lost a lot of things in fairly noticeable ways. I think a lot of the meaning crisis-y type stuff, what people is feeling is often like, yeah, I'm so comfortable that it's like impossible to force myself to go face reality. And like it's almost impossible for any individual to go and force themselves to face reality. Like it's so comfortable out here, right? And yeah, how far can we go before it becomes not even available at like the far end of the spectrum, where people who like are really dedicated to like finding that pocket can't even find it?
For me, this comes to my weird faith in the universe. The more I like explore surrender, I find I genuinely believe the universe won't ever let us get too comfortable. Or at least there's like the edge is always there. And the edge it'll find or call people to it as it wills. Like I can't say like I chose to go. No, I can't really say I chose to go to the edge. It was like the edge called me. I like I don't know if any of y'all know about like my tornado story, but like a pivotal moment in my life was like when I was 22, like a tornado came down like on top of like my neighborhood in my town, in my like college town. It was just like being exposed to that level of like spontaneous like danger, like to be so clearly reminded of like my weakness, my like insignificance in the face of like the raw power of nature. It was like, even in the sanitized comforts of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, there was still like, it was just, the universe was like, hey, we can still get you here too. But I do. Yeah.
I guess this is the first time in history, like the last couple of decades anyway, where we've had to have this conversation about reintroducing difficulty because things are too comfortable. And that's just weird. So I guess, on the scale of like complete wilderness human, fighting for survival every day versus, I don't know, the humans in Wally who are floating around a comfort spaceship hotel on chairs that feed them everything. Like we're somewhere towards the high tech spaceship chairs at this point, and we want to push back, but we also don't want to go back to like fully like primal living off the land and could die any day and die of our teeth because we haven't got antibiotics. Humans, so it's kind of artificial whatever we do in a sense. So then how do we calibrate now that we can choose where to set the dial? What I don't know what benchmarks to use or what metrics to look at to evaluate where the dial should be set. Honestly.
Yeah. This is one of those, I don't know, I feel like this conversation keeps coming back to like a lot of individual level stuff of like, how do we feel? How would we sort it out with each other, etc. It does, I don't know. I feel something in the direction of if society can like wake up its right hemisphere brain or whatever. And there's that, can you guys hear like a child screaming or no? Yeah. The neighbors go nuts.
Little bit, that's fine.
But
it's chaos is interrupting us with some,
that it do. At least it's interrupting before 11 p.m. this time. But yeah, no, there's this beautiful line that has stuck with me around like when you're playing music, like at a certain level, it stops feeling like you're playing the music and starts feeling like the music is playing you. And there's like a back and forth there. And that there has to be some like societal level version of that where it's not deciding where the dial is set, it is responding to where the dial wants to be set and like moving with it to that place. And just on a personal level, I keep seeing a bunch of like, I don't know, something in the area of like the solar punky archeo futurist, like the past, but the future, but like the past future. I'm like, yeah, there's something there. Like, it'd be great to like live in cave, but like it's a nice cave and you get perfect nutrition and also you can travel. There's something in there. But yeah, it seems like a hard. That's the whole thing. Where's the dial?
I'm thinking, ooh, I want to figure out if I can express this paradox. There's this channel. So I'm from Toronto, Canada, and there's this channel called CP24 that is basically kind of like this grid where it always has the weather for the next 7 days. And it has like a kind of random news cycle. And then it has this ribbon of text of just like, honestly, it's like awful things happening around the world. It's just like a ribbon of constant updates on awful things happening in the world. And CB24 plays everywhere. It's just like in the subways, often like if you're sitting in, and it has traffic. So if you're sitting anywhere, it's like that default channel that people put on. So you can kind of have like a pulse on what's happening. But ever like, it's like, I almost experience it as like profoundly, oh, this is such a, I don't know why I want to use this word, but it's like evil. There's something that feels like evil about this CP24 channel that is everywhere and is like insidiously just like omnipresent, that is constantly running through, like it's like 2 children just died in like Tasmania for some reason. Like it's honestly so surreal. Or like, oh yeah, like this war that is happening, and these people were tortured, and this woman just drowned, and this, and it's like this like almost like constant numbing nonstop chain of terrible things happening in the world. Um, and I was just, and there's something about that where when we're thinking about like left brain, right brain, like I think there's this way in which there's this virtualization of reality that's so omnipresent that almost makes us, it takes even danger, like true tragedy, just like the tragedy of suffering in that way, and just like flattens it into something that is just like next to the weather and the traffic. And it makes you feel like you know what's happening in the world. And actually, all it does is like alienate you further from actually feeling and seeing reality clearly. And there's like something I've been noticing that, and here's like the desirable difficulty that is like very much at the edge of my being when it's like trying to figure out how to, because, okay, yeah, here's it. It's like the more that I sensitize myself to what is real, what is real, it's like the more so much of reality is actually intolerable for my system. It's almost like sometimes it feels like the more that I sensitize myself to aliveness and to the joy of like, yeah, this tree that's in front of me, then I'm suddenly like in the city and I'm surrounded by, yeah, like even I was just on the bus the other day and I was just like driving, it was just driving through the area in Toronto where all the fancy Louis Vuitton, like those stores were. And I was sitting there like shaking, just being like, and I was on this bus full of people like who were of color, like and and we were all just like, I don't know, there was something that was so like imbalanced about it that I could barely tolerate. Like I was like shaking and I was tearing up on this bus and being like, I can't, like, this is like a level of danger in my system that's not like when I'm in the tent and like thunder and lightning and storm is around me. This is like a very different kind of um wrongness. And that is not desirable difficulty. That's like that's something else altogether. And so I'm trying to figure out how to be kind of in right relationship with that. It's an edge.
There's something here about River's point with the left and right hemisphere stuff, where left hemisphere is very, you know, the stuff that we've built as humans, shall we say, cities are very left hemisphere things. The way we work is very left hemisphere-y. And then right hemisphere is more like how nature is and how things are when the humans don't get involved, at least in a left hemisphere kind of way. And the examples that you gave before around tornadoes and canoeing through through gorgeous landscapes, I assume, and it was bears, that's natural. Whereas having insertions of death around the world and high-end boutiques and that kind of thing is very man-made, a very human injected thing. And that's the thing that's harder to be with if you're attuned to the natural kind of aliveness. There's something interesting to me in that it almost feels desirable to put your phone down, and it's difficult to put your phone down and go into the wilderness and let that kind of wake you up. But it's much more difficult to look at the world inside of a bus. Like, it's safer, it's much, much safer, but it's somehow more dangerous and more difficult. And that doesn't seem incorrect to me, actually. That seems like a perfectly good response, but one that most people don't have access to, and one that if you've unlocked it, probably makes your life more difficult, unfortunately. But it's still the correct direction of travel, I think, to resolve the situation we're in. It's a unfortunate paradox there.
I'm gonna bob something out based on what Cheryl and Michael just said. I'm hearing this phrase in my mind, the edge of samsara, the edge of like, the suffering, like the raw, like the most raw forms of it. I think about my time in the Bay Area and like the disturbing shit I saw so regularly, like, regularly like walking around like downtown SF and like, I'll never forget coming up the steps out of the bar one day and like walking through a cloud of like freebase smoke and being like, why did that just happen? Thinking about like how raw the suffering what I saw was, like the wretchedness I saw. And to me, there's a thing I want to say about this, like that edge of samsara, like I feel like in a way, I'm not gonna give up on this thread. It's like sometimes it feels like I'm gonna use we, and we can include whoever we want in that we, are collectively being trained, expanded to face that level of difficulty, that like level of sorrow and pain and like decay. Like I think about my neighborhood in Birmingham and like, lots of like burned out buildings and like regular gunfire in the distance. And it's just like, that's a whole different edge. That's a whole different frontier of like, it's like approaching, it's like, it's coming. for some fucked up reason, that's exciting to me. I I don't think we need to worry about manufacturing difficulty. I think it's gonna come for us. Uh
Yeah, there's something coming up while Cheryl was talking about like the ribbon of evil from across the world coming through. Just around, yeah, how we've mostly been talking about from our side of like, how do you find difficulties that are desirable and engage with them and stick in them? But then there's the other side of like, everything's already really fucking difficult for a whole lot of people. And that is very often horrible kinds of difficulty that don't always need to be such horrible kinds of difficult. Like life can find all types of ways to be difficult. And it seems like a lot of the difficulties are kind of imposed from, I don't know, what's coming up is something around like the nature and human cities distinction, the left hemisphere, right hemisphere distinction. There's something coming up around like difficulty emerging from complexity versus difficulty emerging from like us fucking that up and like trying to make a simple system that oops turns out nothing is simple and it just spills over onto everyone. And I'm thinking particularly around the way that like, have you ever seen some of those old anthropological videos of like tribal groups going to war with each other, and like not a lot of folks getting hurt in that. Like there's a lot of retreat and run, someone throws a spear, they run, they retreat, they beat their chest, they do all the like fuck you guys, we're gonna beat you. But like deaths were not super common from that, at least from what I've seen in like the anthropological studies of those local groups and their, again, wars, they call them wars, versus, you know, post World War One, just like, yeah, we got a machine gun and we took out everyone who was running at us in a line until the line of dead bodies got stacked so high that we couldn't shoot through it. So we had to send out people to shove off the, like World War One was a nightmare. And everything since then has been like trying to outrun the nightmare with new technology, creating new nightmares where kids are terrified of blue skies because the drones can come on the blue sky days, right? Yeah, all of which is to say there's something here for me around like difficulty emerging from natural complexity, which suck, but tend to have more something to them that we can like deal with, grow from, etc. Versus a lot of these imposed difficulties that are just overspill of shitty systems living in shitty ways and perpetrating shitty generation after shitty generation. And then we have a ribbon of evil from across the world. I'm not sure how much of that makes sense. I'm fading.
It makes a lot of sense to me. It just very quickly, it reminds me of, I'm doing this coaching program thing called Alethea. And there's just a line in one of the early materials in there where he says, we are complex organisms. Like, we are a very complex system as humans. The world is very complex as well. Fortunately, we evolved as complex organisms inside this complex world. Like, we are perfectly adapted to the complexity of the world. Yay, cool, perfect, we're at home all the time. Except that we then changed the kind of complexity by introducing all of the garbage that you're pointing to from World War One, where it's like, actually, you've only had like 100 years to get used to that kind of complexity, and it's changing every year. And so just reminded me of that, how we've created the kind of thing that is not like home to be in.
We created the difficulty we needed to keep growing. This is the forward edge. I was at this Eclipse gathering 2 weeks ago. I smoked a little bit of a J with the dude and went for a walk. That's really relevant. There was this moment where I kind of got this thing. I was just like, oh, we're all constantly at the forward edge of creation. You know, every person that's alive right now is at the front line of like the wave of the creation of space-time. And like, what that makes me think about is like, we're not going to go back to how things were because we already did that. What's the challenge in that? What's the difficulty in that? We know how to build our way from the caves up to this. And now like the forward edge is like, okay, how do we manage this absurd amount of power that we've developed? And like, it's, I think, you know, I didn't used to be a collapse guy. I always used to think like, oh, we're gonna like, nah, we'll probably figure it out. I think at the collective edge of desirable difficulty, I think something's, oh man, I hate to be that guy. I'm gonna be that guy. I think there's something coming. Um, I think at the level of individual, like desirable difficulty, yeah, it's not always being. Even then, I don't know if that's true. I don't know how to contribute to this. This is hard. This is like I got so too many thoughts. It's like here's the thing. I can't speak for the experience of other people. For all I know, they are at the edge of their like experience, the edge of like what is a manageable amount of difficulty for them. Or based on the circumstances, the point they originated at. And then collectively, it's like, am I challenging the premise? I'm challenging the premise. I think in this moment right now, I believe that like whether it's clear or not, or whether we're viscerally connected to that current of aliveness that responds to being engaged with the fucking thing. I can't help but wonder right now if everybody is always at playing at that edge. I mean, I'm getting too meta. I'm getting too like into like samsara shit and like suffering and like just existence. But that's what's most fascinating to me. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know how to do. I don't know how to do this. I'm gonna take a second. I'm gonna go to the restroom. I'll be back. I'll be listening.
Cool. Is that someone else's cat, or did you bring me up out with you?
No, this is my friend Agent's cat. His name is
He's
Bear.
perfect. Bear is perfect.
Bear.
Yeah, it strikes me with a lot of what Anansi is saying. Like, I don't know, it feels like it's broadening out to a core question of like, is it possible for reality to come unbalanced or to come unhinged and so on, or not? And like, I feel like either belief can lead to like really productive places and stuff, but like people tend to just be on one side of the belief or not at some place in their lives. Where I'm at now is probably like, yeah, I think reality can come unbalanced, and I've been fucking with the what's that concept of like cosmic repair? There's like something in Judaism of like, I'm gonna fuck it up, but basically the idea that like it is the never-ending task of humanity to heal reality, to like effect its repair generation by generation. And there was some line around like, the task is not yours to finish, but nor is it yours to refuse, something like that. And yeah, that strikes me really strongly. Like, yeah, this is part of the task of working out how to fix reality.
That actually helps me like name. Oh, hi, I'm back. Um, I'm glad you brought that up. Someone asked me what the idea of what the purpose of life came up recently. I was just like, oh, I know that. I was like, I know it. Well, I have a strong opinion on it. And I was just like, look, just look at what's been happening in recorded history for all we know. It's the story of evolution, you know? And overcoming suffering is how beings evolve. So I guess like I do think it is a never-ending task. I agree with that like never-ending task part of it. I just think the ends are just the continual evolution of like physical matter and consciousness in the universe. And that's just based on what I have observed. That seems to be what is happening on this planet. It doesn't look great all the time. Uh I don't know. That is the way of seeing I've found that has given me the most coherence and peace about what's happening here. So, and I guess that's part of where my like somewhat uncoherent ramble about the edge of samsara was coming from. Which I guess my thing is just like, how do you know reality is unbalanced? How do you verify that information beyond? And it's just like, I can't know. There's just so much mystery. It's the mystery. It's just this evolving mystery. Man. Anyway, uh, y'all have at it again. I'm gonna be quiet.
I think there's something arising in response. It's like, I know something is out of balance because like my heart is breaking all the time. And I notice like even just here, it's like talking about this, there's so much tension in my body. Like there's so much intensity in my, yeah, it's almost like I'm like so, there's something that's kind of contracted in my system that feels like it's almost, yeah, it's like clenching in a way where I feel a bit breathless with it. And I think there's like something here around, yeah, one of my teachers, she describes how she's like, what you have to do, like what we're called to do is just to see reality perfectly. And to see reality perfectly is not to see reality as perfect, but to see it perfectly. And I think the task of seeing reality perfectly, and yeah, there's like something around right now, the edge for me in my body here is like seeing how profoundly out of balance it is and feeling actually like if and when we move in collapse, um, suffering only amplifies exponentially. So I think it's like the for me, yeah, there's like something about seeing reality through compassion is like the it's very hard, but it is a desirable difficulty for me. It's like because there's also something in it where it's like if I can see reality more perfectly in its wholeness, like there is something in me that's like the miracle of that form of beholding also changes something. Like it, yeah, uh, something in that edge that's just on the cusp of expressibility.
Yeah, just to tie both of those together, I think a bit like the. Do we know Pierre Teilhard de Chardin? Is that a no? He's one of the original like cosmic evolution dudes. Basically, he helped with the excavation of the Peking Man fossils back in the I don't know 40s or whatever. And a lot of the modern like evolution of consciousness, we are the unfolding of an evolutionary process of the universe, is pretty much downstream of him. Hey there. And one of his ideas that I had not heard of until I started like actually reading him was the zest for life. And yeah, he basically described the zest for life as what we would call aliveness, essentially, but described it as like something much deeper than any particular emotion or passing disposition in a person. And his description of it is that in the zest for life, there is nothing less than the energy of universal evolution, which is in the form of an innate pull towards being, wells up in what is most primitive, and therefore least controllable in each one of us. And there's something here around how, like, yeah, humans are the instrument of how the universe feels itself, how reality pulls itself forward, of what wants to happen next. And part of that is the zest for life and unfolding and evolution and moving forward. And part of it is, yeah, just a huge amount of grief and just looking out and seeing, yeah, just seeing and feeling what's happening out there. And it's not all good. But yeah, that both of those can be there and that both of them are like important elements in an evolutionary process.
I love that. That feels like an expanding view to hold. There is the forward edge of like evolution, and there's also like another edge where it's like repairing as it's going and repairing and healing as it's going. I guess there's no reason there can't be both.
Yeah.
I also find myself feeling some like embarrassment and shame after your share, Cheryl. I think I expect this place to be hell. I think I expect this place to be the charnel ground. That was the impression I got when I was younger. I was like, oh, this is just how it is. I think that dried up my tears. I was curious. I don't know what to do about that. Anyway, thank you for sharing that.
I've got more screaming next door. So that's there. Yeah, anything else that feels like it wants to be followed or said? Feel like I see something brewing in Michael, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm curious about what's going on with Michael.
I guess the thing I'm noodling on, it's not linked to that last conversation, but so in Alexander technique, people often call it the work. Like a teacher will say, you know, how did you come to the work? And the work implied there is the doing it all the time, is the staying in contact with reality, as you've been saying. It's like staying there and noticing what's going on and not checking out. And to me, that almost feels like the world that we're creating is making that the most difficult work of all, because there's so many ways of just sliding off direct contact in some way. Things that push us around, pull us away, social media devices, cities, all this kind of stuff. And to me, it feels like both the most difficult and the most desirable at the same time, to be able to just stay there regardless of what shows up, whether it's heartbreak, whether it's joy, whether it's whatever, and kind of go, okay, what is real right now? What is actually happening, and can I stay there? I don't have a point to this. It's just that's what I'm taking away, I guess, from some of these threads.
It is interesting in this context that like the past few decades have been a huge wellspring in people deciding to consciously come to that work over and over again. Not specifically Alexander technique, but it's, you know, all the various ways of doing that. That's nice. People are choosing to come and do it. or choosing? All right. Well, unless Anansi is brewing something, I'm gonna cut us off there. You good, Anansi, or?
I'll share my final thought. It was just like, what if this didn't have to be the charnel ground or a crucible or hell? I'm just wondering what it takes to like reach Cheryl's compassion. Or maybe that's not my job. I don't know.
What if
I
this
want to
is
throw it
heaven?
spicy. So
No, what if this is also heaven? Like yeah, there's something, it's a very, what you're saying is true, and it's also heaven. It's like all here. It's all here, not subdivided into sections. It's like all co-present and mingling. And I do, it's like I also want to almost like share on some kind of, it's like what makes difficulty desirable for me, like what keeps me feeling alive, like that eros of like meeting that edge is hope. Like I don't think like I don't actually believe that it is just kind of like this inevitable collapse into like I don't know. Oh wow, sorry, a blue jay just flew right in front of me. Um yeah, like I think there's actually so much, there is something around, yeah, there's something around what we're describing, like this, the work. It's more, it's not, it's like there is something around like by seeing something, by seeing differently, by knowing what's available to us in all of these different ways of seeing. Like there is some kind of like calling forth that can unfold. And sometimes it expresses itself as like a kind of collective awakening, but I think it's also, it's not like the miraculous isn't as like everything explodes into some kind of blissful heaven. Like I think you just attune to the heaven that's already here, like just more, just a little bit more. Yeah.
And I'll just close out with a tweet that I read a year or two ago. I'm at the charnel ground. I'm at the Pure Land. I'm at the combination charnel ground of Pure Land. That seems to be our leaving off point. All right. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording right about here.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, dude.
If I can figure out, nope, that is leaving the meeting.
You're doing great.
Where's the recording?